The television series called Roots was viewed by millions. Later on, it was rerun and viewed by more millions. It traced the origin of one black family, or their roots, back for a couple hundred years or so into Africa. Now the Jews know their roots. It's traced through the Bible, all the way back to the very first created man, Adam, and their mother, Eve. Also, the Arabs know that almost every Arab knows he is descended from Ishmael, and Ishmael was a son of Abraham, mentioned in the Bible, and through that they have their roots all the way back to the first created man, Adam. Also, the Turkish people are generally known to be descended from Esau. They have their roots in Esau, and Esau is mentioned in the Bible, and you have his genealogy all the way back to the first created man, Adam. But where are our roots? Where are the roots of the American people, the Canadians, the English, and the people of northwestern Europe, even of Germany? Why is our identity lost?
The World Tomorrow. The Worldwide Church of God presents Herbert W. Armstrong, internationally recognized ambassador for world peace, visiting prominent leaders around the globe, discussing the cause of world problems, and proclaiming the good news of the world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Herbert W. Armstrong.
Why is it we do not know where we are? Our identity is lost, while other people can trace their ancestry and their roots all the way back. Well, I'm going to give you the answer. Because our roots can be traced, and we can come to know who we are, and I'm prepared to reveal that truth to you. Now, the Jews are pretty well recognized for who they are because of their recognition and continued recognition of the seventh-day Sabbath. It's known in so many quarters even as the Jewish Sabbath. Did you know that the first place in all of the Bible where the word Jews is mentioned is in the Bible in 2 Kings 16, verses 5 and 6. That's 2 Kings 16, verses 5 and 6. If you go back to some of the roots of Israel, and the first place where the name Jew is mentioned is in this particular scripture. I'll quote it. Then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, who was the king in Jerusalem, but they could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, the king of Syria, now allied with Israel, recovered Elath to Syria and drave the Jews from Elath. Now there's the first place the Jews are mentioned, and they're at war with the ally of Israel. Israel is there allied with Syria. And Israel's ally drove the Jews from Elath. And the Syrians came to Elath and dwelt there unto this day, as you read in 2 Kings 16:6. The first place where Jews are mentioned, they were at war against Israel. Now, can you imagine that? The Jews at war against Israel. Why, doesn't everybody think that the Jews are Israel? But the truth is they are not. The Jews are not Israel at all. And it's time we get some of these identities straightened out. After King Solomon of Israel died, his son Rehoboam came to the throne. Solomon had taxed the people very greatly. As a matter of fact, he had overtaxed them. And he was living in greater and more gorgeous splendor than any king ever had. The people of Israel sent their representative to King Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, who now was the king, and they said to him, "If you will lighten our taxes and not put this burden on us like your father Solomon did, we will serve you. But if you do not, and if you're going to continue to tax us, we are going to reject you as our king. You will not be our king any longer." Rehoboam consulted the old men, and they advised him to give in and bring down the taxes. Then he consulted the young men, and they said, "Oh, tell them where to go to." And so he said to them, "My father laid the taxes on you, but I'm going to make it a whole lot worse. I'm going to lay heavier taxes on you." And then Israel rejected him as king. And they took the man who had been, well, today we would call him the prime minister under Solomon. His name was Jeroboam. And they made him the king. And they set up the capital in Samaria, the city of Samaria, north of Jerusalem, some several miles north of Jerusalem. And they rejected Rehoboam as king. At that time, the tribe of Judah seceded from Israel and became the kingdom of Judah. They took a new name. They became known as the kingdom of Judah. Now the tribe of Benjamin went with them, because they were located, adjoining them in territory anyway. And the first thing that the new king Jeroboam did was to change the seventh month festivals of Israel, which was the Feast of Tabernacles, to the 8th month. And also he changed the 7th day of the week, or the Sabbath day, from the 7th day to the 8th day, which was Sunday, or the first day of the week, the beginning of another week. And so a great division was made. Now, the next thing that King Jeroboam did was to put away all of the Levites, who were the priestly tribe. They were the better educated people. They were the most highly educated, the most affluent people in Israel, but he put them away because he was afraid they would lead the people back to King Rehoboam, and Jeroboam would lose out on his throne. And so the tribe of Levi joined with Judah also, and the three tribes of Judah, Benjamin and Levi, became known as the kingdom of Judah. They were not Israel. They were now the kingdom of Judah. Now for the time of 19 different kings and 7 dynasties, the kings of Israel continued to rebel against their God, the Creator. And finally, God had warned them that he would drive them out, and finally he did. And now we trace the history of what happened in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter, beginning with verse 5. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went to Samaria, Israel's capital and Israel's land. The whole land was called Samaria by that time, and besieged it 3 years. That's from 721 to 718 BC. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Israel, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel, no, not the Jews, carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan. Well, this was in the southern shores, near the general area, the southern shores of the Caspian Sea, and in the cities of the Medes. Therefore, the Lord, or the Eternal, was very angry with Israel and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only, or the kingdom of Judah. They were left with a capital in Jerusalem, and that was all of Israel that was left in Palestine, in that land, the original so-called Holy Land. Now continuing in verse 23, until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all the servants, the prophets, so was Israel, now not the Jews, but Israel, carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. That is the day that this was written. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria, instead of the children of Israel. In other words, the people called Israel had been moved out of their land. Now they had dwelt in the land called Samaria, and only the kingdom of Judah remained in Judea, or the land surrounding Jerusalem. But Samaria was in northern Palestine, and they were all moved from their farms, from their cities, from their homes, over to the southern shores of the Caspian Sea, and placed them, that is these Gentiles from Babylon and other cities over there, and placed them in the cities of Samaria, instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. Now they were the ones that were called Samaritans in the time of Christ. Now the Jews in the time of Christ were from the kingdom of Judah. And they are the ones that Christ came to, his own. Christ himself was of the tribe of Judah, and he came to his own, who received him not. So the nation Israel finally lost its identity. It was driven out away from God. They lost their identity and became known as the lost 10 tribes. God, meantime, had made an everlasting covenant with Israel. It's recorded back in Exodus 31. He had made a covenant with them that was for all eternity, an everlasting covenant with all Israel. This was long before the division between Israel and Judah. This goes clear back into the days of Moses. Now I want to read you that covenant. And it is in Exodus 31, and I'll begin here with verse 13, where God said to Moses, speak also unto the children of Israel, saying, verily my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it, that is the Sabbath, is a sign between me, that is God, and the children of Israel throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you, or that I am the Lord that sets you apart from other nations. Sanctify means set apart. Wherefore, the scripture continues, the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. So it was a covenant, it was perpetual, never to end. Now incidentally, let me mention, this is a covenant, and it is no part of the Old Covenant. It was made after the Old Covenant had been, well, we might say signed, sealed, and ratified, and ratified by blood, as you read back in the 23rd, 24th chapters of Exodus. And this is in Exodus 31. Now verse 17, It is a sign between me, that is God, and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord, or the Eternal, made heaven and earth, and in the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. Now, a sign is an identifying mark. A retail merchant hangs a sign out in front of his store. Oh, it might say Jones and Company Furniture. It tells and identifies who owns it. Jones owns it, Jones and Company. And what is it? It's a furniture store. Or it might say drugs or whatever. And so it was made an everlasting covenant. It was no part of the old covenant, which was abolished at the cross. It was a separate covenant that was eternal and, as a matter of fact, continues on today, if you know who Israel is. Now, the main nation, Israel, had lost its identity, and the Jewish people from the tribe of Judah, Benjamin and Levi only remained. They were all that remained in the land of Palestine. Later, they were taken away to Babylon, and even after that, then a certain colony was sent back to Jerusalem 70 years later to rebuild the temple, which had been destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon about 585 B.C. But the nation of Judah retained their identity because they retained the seventh-day Sabbath, which was the sign that identified them. It identified God because in 6 days God created the heavens and the earth and rested. It identified him because creation is the proof of God, and creation identifies God and who God is. And so it identified God to them. It identified them not only to God, but to the world. Now, the Jews kept their Sabbath sign, and they today suppose that they are Israel because they keep the Sabbath. And yet they are only Judah and not Israel. And Israel was driven out and became lost. Now, they lost the Sabbath. They did not keep it. They had turned to the 8th day, or which became, of course, the first day of the next week, or Sunday. Now, after 718 B.C., lost Israel and Assyria moved west and northwest. They moved from the southern shores of the Caspian Sea, and by the time Judah was taken to Babylon, they had already moved, and now they had moved north and northwest. Now, the Assyrians had settled in the land that we call Germany today. And the Germans of today have their roots back in ancient Assyria. They don't know that, and they don't know who they are. The 10 tribes moved on into Western Europe and into the British Isles. And it's pretty well identified today that especially the northern French, the French people, are the descendants of the tribe of Reuben. That the British were the descendants of Joseph. And Joseph was really divided into two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, the British were quite a colonizing nation. They colonized all over the world, and that's a matter of history that gets down to our time. It's just recently that Britain has lost so many of her colonies. But she did possess India, she possessed most of Africa, she possessed countries all over the world. And she finally grew rich in that way. She was a colonizing people, and the Bible says she was to lose her first colony. The first colony of England migrated to the United States and are identified, if you will study it closely and with many, many texts and passages in different places in the Bible, as the descendants of the tribe of Manasseh, one of the 12 tribes of ancient Israel. and part of the 10 lost tribes that lost their identity and don't even know that they are Israel and think they're Gentiles. And the world thinks so. And the world doesn't know what are their roots or where they came from because they became lost. They lost their language. Now we find today they're speaking the English language. Of course, the English language didn't exist back 700 years before Christ. And the Assyrians had settled in Germany. All of that is a remarkable thing in giving us the roots or the history of our own people, where we came from, who we are, and we can trace our identity all the way, just like other nations can, back to the first created human being, Adam, and his wife that God made from him, for him, called Eve. And all humanity has come from them. And we can have our identity back that far. Now, I have written a book which through many years now has gone out to, well, I was going to say millions of people. I don't just recall how many million. I don't think we've kept a record of the exact number. But this booklet, The United States and Britain in Prophecy, millions of people have read it. It's the most circulated booklet we have ever put out. I haven't announced it now for some little time on this program, and I want to announce it once again, and that will give you some startling information about our ancestry, about your own roots, where you came from. And not only that, it will give you, it is the key to understanding biblical prophecy, and it shows you what Bible prophecy says is going to happen to the United States in the next few years. Now you wonder, where are we going from here? The world is in trouble, and the United States is approaching trouble, many troubles. And it's all written in the Bible, and you can't understand it without this knowledge of our identity, of our own roots, who we are, where we came from, and where we're going. The booklet is The United States and Britain in Prophecy. Now, there's no charge. All you have to do is request it. It's an illustrated book. It's a good many pages, and it will not only identify you and give you the key to understanding all prophecies, but it specifically pinpoints the United States and where we are mentioned as nations, the British and the American people, in biblical prophecy, and what is going to happen in the next few years. What already has happened in Britain is recorded there incidentally. Now, at the same time, I want to send you another booklet along with it. Where is the true church today? I've said something about that in recent programs. The true church of God has had great difficulty. It has been a persecuted church, and great false churches have risen up. But Jesus Christ said that the gates of the grave would never prevail against his church, and it does still exist today. Where is it? This booklet will tell you that. Now also, the finest magazine in the world is published by our organization, called The Plain Truth. One of the largest circulated magazines in the world, over 7.5 million subscribers. Many of you viewing now are already subscribers, but perhaps most of you are not. Here's a recent issue of The Plain Truth with a cover story, "Youth Should Protest, but How?" With the leading article is a personal, like an editorial from me, mystery of the ages. Mystery of the ages. Actually, this is the beginning of my latest book, just coming off the press. It is the largest book, and I think by far the most important that I have ever written, Mystery of the Ages. Here's another article, United Nations at 40. Another article, The Love That Conquers Fear and Depression. So much is being said now about handling stress and things of that sort. It's one of the greatest problems that we all have today in this world. And here's an article that will be very, very helpful that I think you need, and you need to read. Here's another one, Children of the Inner City, What's the Solution? Children of the inner city. That's getting to be one of the great problems in the United States and the major cities of Europe. And as a matter of fact, it's coming even to be a problem in nations like Japan. Children of the inner city. Another article, Youth Should Protest. Now that's the cover story, but how? How? Here's another one on Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, a time of testing. I just returned shortly, some little short time ago, from Sri Lanka, and they're having great troubles over there now. And so terrorism has hit Sri Lanka as it's hitting so much of the world today. And you need to know what the situation is over there. Another article, A View from Down Under. That has to do with Australia and things that you need to know about that continent down under. There are millions and millions reading the plain truth, and 7.5 million subscribers are receiving it, and you may have a year's subscription, no subscription price whatsoever. Now, send your request to me, Herbert W. Armstrong at Pasadena, California. And if you write, the zip code is 91123. But why don't you just go to the telephone right now and call this toll-free number? And I'll jot this down because the lines may be busy. Thousands and thousands of calls are coming in from this program. There are hundreds of people waiting to take your call, hundreds of operators, but sometimes the calls are coming faster than they can handle at the moment. You may need to call again if you don't get through immediately. It's a toll-free number, 800, then 423-4444. It's an easy number to remember, but jot it down. 800, then 423-4444.
Straits once